Jacob needs no introduction, especially not from me. So we know that, we all know, some of us know Dr. Jacob in her few-second brief office visits. We all know her to be the famous baby deliverer, and not just who delivers babies, but then hugs them and kisses them and loves them like they're her own. One of the main questions that we get from our students when they're beginning to learn about Judaism is, wait a second, but it's not fair. I want to also be successful in the secular world. I want to also have a career. Doesn't Judaism preempt that? And so we put our heads together and we realized that the paradigm example of how Judaism not only does not preempt being successful in the secular world, but helps it and enhances it, is Dr. Jacob. I have to just say that I'm sure she's not going to talk about this part, but I was privileged to sort of grow up in Dr. Jacob's house because her daughter was my best friend. And so I knew a different aspect of her when she would come home with her scrubs and do biology homework with us and Navi homework with us. And not only, I have to tell you, does being one of the most successful OBGYNs in all of America, a mother of Kanai Nahara, 7 incredible kids and a whole bunch of grandkids now, prevent her from being as successful in every aspect of her life, but she sat down and did homework with us and made up funny songs with us and did all kinds of cute things with us, just like any mom, any Jewish mom has the love and the heart to do. And so with no further ado, Dr. Jacob.
Thank you so much for your kind, wonderful words. I have to tell everybody, my greatest pleasure in life is when I get to go to Amit's lectures on Shabbos afternoon. I can't tell you what nachas I get sitting there and learning from this young girl who grew up basically in my home. She is unbelievable. And anybody who hasn't gone to those shiurim, I recommend them so totally.
Before Dr. Jacob begins, please everybody check your cell phones, make sure they're off, preferably off, and if you momish can't have them off, although the only doctor, but if you can't have them off, then at least they should be on vibrate. But please, we shouldn't have anything ringing off, even by accident. Thank you.
Okay, so I prepared this talk initially for the high school girls who want to learn more about, is it really possible to achieve my dreams and to be frum? I know that others have come as well, so I'm going to try to make this talk more directly addressing the concerns of the young students, but also interesting and valid for everyone. So, how did it all start? I went to yeshiva from first grade on. I went to Pasuk Park Yeshiva, not because I grew up in a frum home, which I did not, but because my grandmother paid for it. She was frum. My family was very, very traditional, but not so. We were kosher. We didn't violate Shabbos in public so much, but really, religion was really a secondary thing in our home. But yeshiva had such an impact on me, and I was drawn to religion, to Yiddishkeit from the earliest age. As a matter of fact, the two obsessions in my life were I was drawn to from the earliest age, Yiddishkeit and childbirth. Anything related to childbirth, pregnancy, babies, those were my two passions. Anyway, at 10, I talked my mother into sending me to Camp Sternberg, and there I was with all these girls with very long skirts, and I loved it. And I'll never forget my counselor, Miriam Kamenetsky, who I think was from the Kamenetsky family, kissing each and every one of us each night and telling us she loved us. And my associating her religiosity with this warmth and with this kindness. And in fact, that was a correct correlation, and it drew me only closer. But, I wasn't quite there yet, because one thing is, the warm and fuzzy, beautiful feeling, and it's another thing to really act out on all the actual rules, especially in a home that's devoid of the atmosphere, which is going to make the observation of those laws so much more enjoyable. So on I went to Central High School, where I made a lot of friends. And my friends were all Shomer Shabbos, and I got myself invited to their houses as much as I could. And oh, did I love Shabbos in my friends' homes. And I grew close to their parents, and I loved Friday nights and Shabbos, and I was determined that I was now going to become completely religious. And I was going to marry a religious man. And I did. I graduated college before I turned 19, and I got married 2 weeks after my 19th birthday to a modern Orthodox man who was a very good man, but also very modern, very with religion, not quite filling up our lives. We became completely Shomer Shabbos. I became completely Shomer Shabbos. He always was kosher, Taras Mishpacha. But it didn't quite have the flavor it should have for us. We were so anxious to fit into the secular world in those days. We had secular values, aspirations, and dreams. We were so busy in those days, little children, attending to our jobs, attending to school, etc. And we used to fantasize about, oh, one day when we're not so busy, we're going to travel the world, we're going to go to fancy hotels, we're going to luxuriate by pools. Our dreams were very different from what they later became. I finished medical school. We, of course, went on to an OB/GYN residency and went into private practice. Our lives continued to remain enmeshed in the secular world. We went to the parties of our colleagues, non-Jewish parties, where we danced like everyone else. We just didn't eat anything, we didn't drink anything, but clearly something was missing from our lives. And, you know, I couldn't figure it out. I had what I wanted. I had my children, I had my obstetrics and gynecology. We had our dreams, but it wasn't enough. Something was missing. Something wasn't right. One day, on Shabbos, June 14th, 1997, I was sitting in shul with my youngest child, Eitan. Many of you may know Eitan. He lives at Torah R. He was always an extraordinary, unusual child and young man, and very mature and very wonderful and giving and kind. And at 2.5, he was well behaved enough for me to sit in shul the entire time without us making a peep. And I was listening to the Parsha. It had been years since I was able to sit in shul listening to the Parsha. And there it was. We got to the verse, Ufara et Rosh Ha'isha. The Kohen Gadol would uncover the woman's head and reveal her hair. And this is the verse where the sages derive, where Rashi says the sages derive, that it is disgraceful for a Jewish woman to not cover her hair. I almost fell off my chair. I couldn't believe it was right there, like part of the Torah. I ran over to the Rebbitzin, Mrs. Lerner, and I said, "You mean it's written in the Torah?" And she said, "Of course." I thought covering your hair was a nice little minhag, a nice little custom. I had no idea that our religion was so much more. Everything that people were doing was in the Torah. And that was the day everything changed. I covered my hair from that day on. And as I covered my hair, I started changing my wardrobe as well, because it feels weird to cover your hair and then you're wearing pants and you're wearing mini skirts. So everything kind of got longer and longer and more. And you know something, at first it was very painful. Because, you know, it's nice to run around, you know, with beautiful modern clothes and to feel sexy and to, you know, and it's more comfortable and you can get things on sale at Macy's at any time and not have to, you know, go through all the racks. But as time went on and I started dressing like this, it started feeling so good. And I started respecting myself more and I started feeling holier. And another thing happened. My daughter, my middle daughter, Daniela, had learning issues through school. When she was in Central, in her last year, she took a course in laws of Jewish women. Every night I transcribed her lecture from that day from Mrs. Abby Lerner. I transcribed it into a notebook and we went over each lecture every day. We did this all year. And guess what? I learned the halachas of a woman's life in Judaism. And I fell so in love with our role. But then I was really nervous. What was going to happen to my practice? After all, wasn't I successful because I was part of the secular world? Wouldn't my patients think I'm weird? Wouldn't the nurses think I'm weird? Like, what was going to happen? You know, would patients think of me as being this fanatic Jew? Would they believe in me? Well, guess what? My practice started to prosper unbelievably from that time. The religious women loved it. They felt so comfortable. The irreligious women didn't care. Like, what's the difference? So she's covering her hair. And the non-Jewish women, you know, to them a Jew is a Jew. You know, if you're not religious, you are religious, you're a Jew. And it's so fascinating because I have so many different kinds of patients. I have Hindus and I have Muslims and Catholics and Protestants and atheists. And it's so fascinating how they really kind of cubbyhole Jews into a certain box. And we, in the Jewish world, we have all our differences, like there's so many different Jews, and to them, we're just Jews. And what's fascinating is that although we are paranoid about people not liking us professionally, if they know we're Orthodox Jews, there's something out there in the non-Jewish world that's magical about being a Jewish professional. Like there are many people who assume that because I'm a Jewish doctor, I'm probably brilliant. And they're proud to be going to a Jew doctor. I've had people tell me that, oh, I told them I'm going to a Jew doctor. My newly developing religiosity helped me to practice, and my practice helped bolster my religiosity. Let me tell you, working with Jewish women, being in the delivery room, I don't see how it's possible for anybody to stay agnostic or be an atheist in a delivery room with the myriad of miracles that we see take place. My temperament changed as I became more religious and as I delved more into our beautiful religion. A Jew who feels close to God knows that a Jew who feels close to God knows that God is there with us every step of the way. We become less arrogant when things go well, but we also become less despairing when things don't. I started listening to shiurim on my iPod about arrogance, jealousy, anger, about derech eretz. I became more patient with my patients, realizing I'm simply a shaliach to help them. And I grew to love caring for my fellow woman. What a privilege it is to care for Jewish women. And every day, I have to tell you, I pinch myself about twice a week. Is it really possible that this is my life? I find it a privilege to take care of you ladies. And what happens is, when you realize what a tafkid you have and what a privilege it is, and as you become less arrogant, it influences what goes on inside of you with everything else as well. My persona helps me with my patients all the time. Most patients are kind and sweet and wonderful, but there are patients, thank God the minority, who are awful, who are obnoxious, who are demanding and mean-spirited. And in the old days, I would find myself getting caught up with arguing with them, and then you feel so low, like you didn't do the right thing. And with the new persona that one attains, when one does learn what our religion is really all about, and you get more patient, and you get more loving, you keep your dignity, and everything stays on an even keel. And things don't deteriorate the way they do when you're not having these precepts in mind. In conquering anger, and the conquering of anger is the single most important thing for a Jewish doctor to have, because it's when she loses her temper that things go bad. You say things that you might regret tomorrow, you raise your voice, and it changes actually what you become. When you keep your voice soft, and you don't get angry, and you just control all the outside, you feel the anger leaving your insides, and you can take care of your patients more correctly. As I grew myself feeling closer to Hashem, I found that I could see Hashem's actions in so many parts of my professional life. Not only in the delivery room, when I'm davening to Hashem in my head, and then suddenly the baby's heartbeat is better, or the woman stops bleeding, or something like that. But let me give you an example of something unbelievable that happened to me a year and a half ago. I was in court for the first time, a huge lawsuit, which was the most ridiculous lawsuit in the world. They were suing me for $3.5 million. They said that I damaged their baby. It was baseless. The pregnancy, I took care, wonderful care of her. I sat with her through a long labor and delivery. The baby was fantastic. The baby had a great aqua. The baby was pink and crying. And then the baby had certain issues. The baby's fine now, by the way. But they brought a lawsuit anyway. Was sitting in court. The judge was crazy. He was anti-doctor. The jury was crazy. They were very uneducated. It was not a good jury. They had to reject 3 good jurors because I had delivered their babies. So I had a very lousy jury, an awful judge, and it looked like the cards were stacked against me, even though the case was baseless. The case was based on the fact that the parents were saying that the baby was really blue and limp and close to death in the delivery room, and that the medical records said otherwise because the nurses liked me and they said data. Well, what happens? The husband, God was in the courtroom. It was it wasn't even a nace, it was like a nace galoi what happened that day. The baby's father was on the podium, and his attorney, the plaintiff's attorney, says to him, "Oh, so do you have any pictures of Caitlin?" He pulls out 3 pictures. He goes, "Sure, in my wallet I must have pictures." 3 pictures of his baby. One is a picture of the child now, a cute little, at that time 3-year-old, 4-year-old. Another picture in the nursery in an incubator, and the 3rd picture was a picture of a pink, healthy, beautiful baby, brand new, in the parents' arms, smiling from ear to ear in the delivery room.
Oh my God.
How did that picture make its way? And this was not by my attorney. This was his attorney asking him questions, and he pulls out his own pictures. God. So let me just tell you something. I forgot to say that every day in that courtroom I sat and said to him, with more earnestness than I had ever said them in my life. And it really worked. And by the way, that lawsuit was a healthy thing for me, because you know how obstetricians are all crippled by a fear of lawsuits. And what that lawsuit taught me was, you know something? It doesn't matter what really happens. It's all up to God, and it's all up to good medicine, and you just have to do the best medicine you can, and whatever God wants to happen is what's going to happen. So I don't obsess about lawsuits anymore, and that's why I don't do a million I try never to do C-sections. Anyway, to get back to the professional aspect of this change, as my practice grew and attracted more women, North Shore Hospital, which had traditionally not been very Jew-friendly, fell in love with religious Jews. We're a great business. We have a lot of babies. And when a woman has a baby in a certain hospital, she then will refer everything else that she needs to that same hospital. So it's a good business. Well, all of a sudden, North Shore Hospital was interested in Orthodox Jews. What can we do, Dr. Jacob, to make their lives better? And they have done a tremendous amount with their big column and anything I ever asked them to do for my religious Jews, they do it. So my religiosity became an asset at the hospital also. Now, what about Shabbos for the younger people here who are thinking of the profession and thinking of medicine? Shabbos is really, when you go through medical school, Shabbos should not be an issue because there's very little you have to ever do on Shabbos. It's really more, it's postponed until after you become a resident. And what happens as a resident? There are Shomer Shabbos programs. Unfortunately, in OBGYN, there are very, very few. But there are heterim. One has to speak to one's Rav. It's a doable thing. The Shabbos issue. Now, what about when you're in private practice? I've been very lucky. When I first went into practice, I was with a large group that knew that the only way they were going to get me is if they offered me something good. And they offered me, excuse me for 1 second. Hello? Good. Can I call you back? I'm giving a lecture in front of a whole bunch of ladies. Okay. Okay. Are you going to still be there? Oh, a radiologist, I'm so sorry. But she said I could call back. As far as when I first went into practice, I was asked to join a group that gave me off every Shabbos and Yom Tov. Then when I went on my own, I couldn't do that anymore. I'm on call every Shabbos. But I don't make rounds, I don't travel if I don't have to. I go into the hospital for emergencies and deliveries, and I obviously only do what I feel is absolutely necessary for life-threatening pikuach nefesh. What has religion done for me as a physician? I've never been happier in my life. I enjoy my professional life more than ever. Being kind to others and helping others is such an important precept of Yiddishkeit. When a Jewish woman says that she's had a great birthing experience, she can't wait to have another baby, I feel great. When I've helped save a kala from bleeding before her wedding, I feel great. Or when I can help a married woman with her bleeding issues and help her intimacy issues, I feel wonderful. When I pick up a cancer or some life-threatening disease in someone who comes in for a routine checkup, when I've saved a woman from an unnecessary C-section, or when a woman comes into my office and I can pick something up that saves her or her baby, there's nothing more rewarding. I'll never forget, there was a woman, Ziva, a number of years ago, came into my office for a regular checkup, 28 weeks, regular checkup. And I'm seeing her uterus didn't grow one inch since her visit a month earlier. I sent her immediately over for a sonogram. Do you know that that baby was just about to die? It was just, I'm not going to call it a coincidence, obviously Siyata D'Shmaya from God that she was in my office that day for her checkup. We did an emergency C-section. The baby was really about to be a stillborn. The baby is now a beautiful little, I think, 9-year-old. So that's the kind of thing that, like, how could you not want to go into medicine, right? Also, as an Orthodox Jew, one is suffused with an emunah that Hashem micromanages everything. He's there with me all the time when there's a difficult case. My prayers to God, I know, are as important as my medical management. Knowing that God is with me is so comforting because I'm never on my own. I'm just a shaliach, and I daven every day that I be the best shaliach possible. But just as with everyone else on this earth, life isn't always easy. Life is filled with nisyonot, trials and tribulations. I'll never forget. I used to be on TV sometimes, on these talk shows or on these whatever. I was once interviewed by Katie Couric on the Today Show. She asked me how did I do it, practice medicine and have a large family. And after I answered her some superficial, silly answer, she turned to the editor of Working Mother magazine and said, well, Dr. J clearly has a cushiony life. How do real women do it? Let me tell you, my life is as real as it gets. I have the same nisyonot, not the same. I have my share of tsaros just like everyone else does. Baruch Hashem, because God gives us exactly what we need to develop into the people we have to become. I've had my personal challenges and my professional ones. My biggest professional challenge, and there's going to be heartache in medicine. This is just part of it. I had a patient, a holy woman, who, and I don't want anybody to walk away with the fear that this is going to happen to them because these things are 1 in a million, and if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. But her group B strep cultures were negative, and group B strep is a bacteria that we test for in every pregnancy. If the culture comes back showing this bacteria in the woman's genital tract or rectum, we treat her with antibiotics in labor. She delivered, we worked very hard at getting the baby out. It was a very big baby, we worked very hard. The baby was beautiful at birth. And 12 hours later, the baby descended into the worst infection I've ever seen in my life. This is the way it was meant to be. The baby grew out for the cultures, for the bacteria that was presumably negative was now positive. This baby suffered severe brain damage and died just shy of his 3rd birthday. These people, his parents, were the most wonderful, holy people who never looked back and said, why me? Their lives were centered around caring for this child and making this child's life as comfortable as could be and accepting it as God's wish. They now have another child, and they're going to go, with God's help, have a big, beautiful family. They're young. But how much they have taught me, but how much I cried over this child. I probably cried more over this child than about anything else in my life. So, Baruch Hashem, when we leave, again, God gives us these trials and tribulations for a reason. Because when we leave this earth, we leave only with our neshamas. Our neshamas should be the holiest that we could possibly make them. And our nisyona, our trials and tribulation, are what shape us, help us grow, and what perfect our neshamas. So it is with love that God gives these trials and tribulations to us. And so, for you young women amongst the ladies here in high school, thinking about your futures, there is so much ahead of you. There are so many choices, so many professions that are open to you. Of course, a woman's most important job is her family, her husband, children, and raising a family must never take a back seat. Explore your options. Medicine, nursing, accounting, actuary, the various therapies, dentistry, physician's assistant, teaching, running a business, giving shiurim, certain kinds of law, but not all kinds of law. A Jewish woman must be sure that she is at the center of her family's life and that her family is at the center of her life. But if she does it successfully, she can successfully work as well. Prioritizing is essential. You have to limit your personal life. You can't be going out to restaurants and theaters and parties because, you have your work, you have your community life, you have your family, and that probably should take up everything. But remember always who you are, a holy Jewish woman. Carry yourself like the princess that you are. You can achieve your dreams with Yiddishkeit helping you, not deterring you. And may you all merit to enjoy wonderful relationships with your loved ones. May they be your children, your nieces, your nephews, your husband, your parents, your siblings. Satisfaction from your work, shalom bayis, peace in the home, menuchas hanefesh, the tranquility of spirit, and simchat chayim, the enjoyment of life.
Okay, so until we get beeped out, we're going to open the floor for questions. So TLC girls, first 3 rows, you guys are up first, and then we'll welcome everyone else. If any of you have questions.
How old were you whenever you became Nova?
So I was 19 when I finished college, a little before 19. I was 24 when I finished med school, and so that's when I started my residency.
How was it so easy for you to become it was so swift for you? You became religious and then
You're asking a really, really good question, because times were different. It's a little tougher today, and I'll explain why. First of all, in the old days, we were much more, what? She's asking a great question. It seemed to have been so effortless. I did things so quickly. I was able to do everything. And, by 24, I was delivering babies. How is that possible? The truth is that it was a different time. We were much more ignorant. I didn't realize, we didn't go asking Rebbeim how questions the way people today are taught to do. So I didn't have a baby until my 4th year of medical school, and that helped a lot. Had it been today, I would have done the same thing. I would have started having babies as soon as I got married, and I would have had to recruit the help that I had then sooner. I had parents, not my parents, my husband's parents helped us a lot. You need loved ones to help. My daughter is a maxillofacial surgery resident. She works like crazy. I am helping so much with her children. They live with us. And I actually help tremendously. I put them to sleep most nights. I take care of them all weekends most of the time. So you need a lot of help from the family. I also happen to have done very well in school. But school was much easier in those days. And we didn't have the same kind of, you have to do this, you have to get through this, you have to get through this. And no one in my day went to Israel the year after high school.
So how is it for us now? I just don't know what it would be like now. How do you want to be religious, go to Israel, come back, learn what you want to do, and then have children? There's so much stuff.
You're right. And my 21-year-old daughter struggles with that all the time. My daughter is married, expecting, finishing up college, and was tearing her hair out about this, has finally decided on nursing. Her ultimate goal is to be a nurse practitioner, because nursing itself, you can do a 15-month accelerated program, and then nurse practitioner doesn't take so long, and you could, now, if you want to go into medicine, you need a lot of family support. You need spousal support, and it's more complicated. You're right. But there are other fields that are also very rewarding.
Thank you.
Yes.
So when you went through your residency, you had children.
Yes, I had 3 pregnancies during my 4-year residency.
And were you religious at that point?
Yes. Yes.
So how did you do that? How did you go through your residency, go through the weekend, taking care of your children and being religious at the same time?
Family support. If I was in the hospital, my husband and in-laws would help with the children. There's a lot of sacrifice initially. only do it, but it's only during the training. Once you're an OBGYN or whatever it is, whatever kind of doctor it is that you want to be, you could pick any kind of lifestyle you want. And there are so many women who pick these big groups, or they work for hospitals, or they have unbelievable lives because their hours are so secured. Now, to be honest with you, I'm so busy, and yet even with my busy life, I have so much time at home because so much of my work is in the middle of the night delivering people. So, like here I am. It's the afternoon, and I was able to, I knew there was like a 5% chance I wouldn't make it today, but here I am. And so, no matter what, in medicine's very different from other fields. Healthcare related fields are much better. Don't go to Wall Street and be careful about law. If you go into a more restrictive law, that's great. There are a lot of female lawyers who have these nice jobs, but you can't go into corporate law, you can't go into these fancy schmancy law jobs. And forget about Wall Street, don't go to Wall Street. But something like what I do, my kids brag about how often they see me and how much a part of their lives I am. So, it's the getting there that's hard. But once you're there, it's decades of wonderfulness.
When did you decide to become the doctor or go into medical stuff?
At 16, I made my decision to be an OB. 16 was when I started pre-med, and I knew I was only going to medical school so I could deliver babies. So 16. I mean, it's a little unusual. But, it helps when you know early on. If you have a passion, it helps because then you're less driven by the doubts.
What made you want to pursue delivering babies?
What made me want to pursue delivering babies? Because it's nothing more fascinating. Like it's this incredible miracle that takes place on this earth in front of us every day. Without, I can't believe it's not in the headlines every day. Baby gets born. I love maternity. I love the relationship of a mother and a child. I love the whole, it's just so fascinating the way the breasts were created to give milk to the baby afterwards. I was just struck by it from the earliest time. I think because perhaps when I was very, very young, my mother used to talk about, oh, so-and-so is pregnant, and she would talk about wow, and I would be like, what? This is when I was 6 years old. That's why I will tell you something really funny. When I was 8 years old, I was very naive. I didn't know anything about the facts of life. I knew nothing for years. When I was 8, I was a skinny little kid with this big tummy. You know how little kids sometimes have this big tummy? And one day I'm walking down the street looking at my reflection in the window of a store and thinking, maybe I'm pregnant. Maybe there was a mistake. And I was so excited. I came home and I said to my mother, is it possible for me to be pregnant? She really squelched that quickly.
How many years have you been practicing?
Since 87. I'm in private practice since 87, and I'm solo without any partners, but I celebrated yesterday 17 years online.
I think this is something everyone in the group is wondering, but you said that we have to learn to prioritize. What do you do when there are two things that the priorities are both essential? Someone needs to be delivered in your case, and your kids need you or your husband needs you. How do you balance that?
So you just have to figure out at that moment what's more important, and you'll learn to do two things at a time. For example, how many times would I sit in the lounge in the hospital and do homework with my daughter Daniela on the phone? Or I'm going to tell you something really funny about my son got married on September 9th, Ario. And he was away in Baltimore, and then he was away in Canada, and he comes back here to New York for Sheva Brachas, for Shabbat Sheva Brachas. It's Thursday, late afternoon. And he calls me up, and he says, Mom, where should Naomi and I, because I said, we're canceling Sheva Brachas tonight, I want the two of you to just have a relaxing night by yourselves. I got them in the hotel. I said, I don't want to see you, I want you to relax. He calls me up, Mom, where should we eat? I don't know the restaurants in Great Neck. I realized I didn't remember any restaurants either because I don't go out. But I remembered there was a delicious Persian restaurant on Cutting Road, where I said things. Right. I sent them on a walk, but anyway, guess where I was when I was making this phone call? I got the call and I'm telling him, oh, just go walk down the street. I think it's on Cuttermill Road, a Persian restaurant. I was sitting on my patient's bed. Her baby's heartbeat had just gone down. I was in the middle of resuscitating it, but it was coming back up. And I have my hands on her belly, listening, you know, with holding the thing down and I'm having this conversation. Now, of course, the patient was a firm young woman, so she got it. She didn't mind. She knew I was taking care of her and didn't get put off by this conversation at the same time. And I didn't have the heart to say to my little newlywed son, I can't talk to you now. But you just kind of have to multitask. But in general, you do one thing at a time when it's that direct. It's true. But you do things with your children at the same time that you're taking care of things. You know, like right now.
Do you ever wish you can have a more relaxed schedule?
I would
Do you ever wish you can like go to Miami at a beach?
Okay. So that's a very good question, because the truth of the matter is that in a situation like this where a woman has a very busy career and she's into her children and she wants her children to have a normal life, so what happens to the husband? And this is a very big deal. You have to be very, very, very mindful of not having your husband feel like he's left out of your whole life. And it's something that, there's an article that's going to be coming up in Jewish Action magazine very soon. This woman interviewed a bunch of us with busy careers and families, and the conclusion she came to is that everyone said the same thing. It's like a really sticky point with the husband. You have to be very careful. Now, I hadn't taken a vacation in many, 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 many years. I don't need vacations. I love delivering babies and I love my children. So I don't really need a vacation. I hate to say corny, but I love it. But my husband needed a vacation. So for the first time in my life, this year, I took off first 4 years. I went to Florida with my husband, and then another 4 days. And I went to Florida with my husband, and another 3 days I went to Florida for the second half of the week, 6 months apart from each other. And it was very unrelaxing. And I made like I was having a great time. And as I'm sitting on these jet skis, I'm thinking, was it jet skis? What was I on? I went jet skis, right? And parasailing. I'm thinking, this is so dumb. But I smiled and I said, wow, this is so great. By the way, they sell these really great kosher babies. Anybody who wants to know should know. They're the cutest things in the world.
You left the night you delivered yesterday.
Exactly. I went away to Charlene too, and I was dying because I can't miss a delivery of Charlene's. Siyata Deshmaya, Charlene goes into labor just before I let go. On the first one, I missed one. On the second one, I only missed one because the doctor who was covering for me thought she would do me a favor and induce the patient. It wasn't a Jewish patient, so she didn't realize I was going to. She goes, oh yeah, just induce me already. So they were happy, but I'm trying to think of an excuse not to go with Catholic.
What like 2 techniques how you manage your homes, right? Time-saving techniques or
Right. So good question, because I'm really kind of almost back in the same spot that you're in right now. Like last night, because my oldest daughter lives with me, and her 3 children, age 6, 5, and 2. She's divorced, and she's a very busy resident. And so I'm kind of doing that stuff all over again. Right. It's tough. Last night I came home. Wednesday's my long day in the office. I came home. I had to, make sure Shia had to, finish his homework. I had to, make something to eat for Jake. I had to, I have the housekeeper who could put Michael to sleep, the 2-year-old. And then I had to still run back to I still had 2 people in labor that I didn't get back to the hospital for. So you're kind of like doing everything as efficiently as possible. And I still had to tell them a bedtime story. And when you tell them a bedtime story, you talk a little slowly, because you don't want them to get the feeling that you're rushing it. So while you were rushing it, getting into the chocolates and brushing their teeth and doing the whole thing, when you're telling the bedtime story, you tell it really slowly, because if you talk slowly, it only takes another 4 minutes. And it gives them the feeling that you're relaxed and you're with them. And then the second I thought they were asleep, I ran. Right. So when my kids were small,
like froze extra meals,
absolutely.
chop up and prepare for this.
Well, my housekeeper does all the shopping, and you know, and cutting up for me. I cook in huge amounts of things. Okay, it's just questions about the construction of a house affecting a pregnancy. I'll answer in a minute, in a few minutes. What was I saying? Oh yeah. So when I cook, for example, so I'll make a whole bunch of kugels and cranberry crunches and stuff at the same time and freeze them. Right. You know, my meals are only ornate on Shabbos and Yom Tov. During the week we go very simple. The children don't even like ornate stuff. So, you know, chicken and chicken nuggets and hot dogs and pasta and, you know, but that's not even all of it. Getting efficient with the homework. I limit the after-school activities. I have to. If you're going to be realistic, like my daughter emailed me yesterday. It was so funny. Here we are. My 6-year-old grandson has a broken leg. He's in a wheelchair. I'm like overwhelmed like crazy, and their mom emails me from the hospital. Could we sign up for some after-school activities at Yeshiva Har Torah? Which would involve driving out to Queens, you know. I said maybe another year. But, you know.
I actually have a question. You said that you became from leader. Like, I was wondering, like, once you made a decision to be from, did you ever feel like while you were practicing, like, you were like, oh, this would be so much easier? It wasn't from, like I was once, actually you delivered my baby, so I was once with my mother and the appointment with you. It was springtime, and I remember after you walked into I want to know how that would be Passover. How did she do it?
I'll tell you how I do. I got it down to a, you know, I hire 3 men now. I have a 3-man team who know Pesach. They do Pesach every year for religious ladies. They're not Jewish. I hire them like a week before Pesach. They spend the entire day in my kitchen. That's the biggest deal. And then, you know, like I do it, I can't sleep that much. I do skip sleep. I drink a lot of coffee, you know, and, but.
Did you ever feel like being from it was a hindrance?
You know, when I first became religious, like for example, the hair. Oh my God, when I first became religious, oh my God, and I couldn't run out of the house with my, like, wait a minute, I have to have cups. What am I going to do? I'm running. It was so painful at first. And then it became the most wonderful, wonderful. I'm trying not to be corny. It feels so good. And I only wish my peers, my colleagues, could feel the joy I feel. There is so much burnout in the doctor world, especially OBs. Most OBs hate their lives. And when you see God's work in what you do, it's like you can't help but feel anything other than privileged and lucky. So no, now Yiddishkeit only helps me professionally, and I never want to go back to those days where I had that emptiness and that, you know, because when I was modern, very, very, very modern, and not quite getting the flavor, that's when it was harder.
Well, why do you cover your hair?
I'm sorry?
Why do you cover
Why? Because it's right there in the Torah, Midoraisa. It's like right there. It's like Shabbos, kosher, covering
Do you
hair.
remember the way exactly?
So the parsha, it's Parshas Naso in Bamidbar. It's a description. It's in the Bible. It tells about what happens when a man suspects his wife of being unfaithful. What should he do? So he brings her to the temple, and the Kohen. There's a whole bunch of things that they do, and a Kohen takes off her head covering. It's written right there. So Rashi and everyone else, the big translators of the Bible, who lived many, many hundreds of years ago, have stated this is exactly what we mean. Because if he's uncovering her head, that must mean that she must have always had it covered. And that's how we know that Jewish women have to have it covered. And then the Talmud, which was also given to us at Sinai, you know, at the time of the giving of the Torah, delves into it in detail about how you have to cover your hair.
What's the hardest thing for you, like, to keep in religion?
The hardest
thing to keep in religion?
The hardest thing to keep in religion. Lashon Hara. So I said, there's nothing close to Lashon Hara. Nothing close. It's a shame, you know. It's so hard to conquer Lashon Hara. But other than Lashon Hara, hardest thing. Michal, could you help me here? Lashon hara, lashon hara, lashon hara. Because, you know, there's nothing like saying some juicy piece of gossip to someone, and all of a sudden you feel like the holiness that you're just walking around with is just like,
How is it hard for you if you're like always like in and out of the hospital, or you're always taking care?
you know, it's fascinating because I have never, Baruch Hashem, I have never been in the hospital on Shabbos or Yom Tov and not remembered at every moment that it's Shabbos or Yom Tov. It's wild. Like you would think, you know, like you lose the holiness, like it loses its holiness once you enter there and you're with your secular peers and you're working with your secular peers and you have to write and you have to do. And at every moment, it's part of my psyche. It's Shabbos, it's Shabbos, it's Shabbos. So every single thing I think about before I do it, does this have to be done? Can I do this with a shinoi, with a change?
You write with your left hand.
Right with my left hand, right with erasable, whatever it is. You know, you think about all, but thank God I have never, ever, ever forgotten. So it stays holy.
Was there any other job you wanted to do except?
You know, I entertained when I was 15 the thought of being an artist or a fashion designer. At 15, but at 16 I knew it was delivering babies.
Dr. Jacob paints. She has paintings also. Beautiful paintings that
I
you
used
think
to
that she
sew,
went
my garden, she like that's my garden.
And she exercises on the treadmill and the Stairmaster every day.
I've got one here. I'm not sure how else I'm going to start asking. How did you not stop Katie Kirk with this?
How do I?
Katie Kirk really said that to you? About you? That hurt.
That's the day I hated Katie Couric.
She's a successful woman herself. How did you think that happened?
No, it's so funny because I had a friend in those days who was a psychiatrist who said to me afterwards, because I was analyzing Katie Couric's behavior when she said that to me. She was sitting on her hand, she looked so tense, she said that out of jealousy.
It's kind of a random question, but when your kids were little, did they ever say, "Oh, they come to work with you," and like how did that?
You know, what I actually used to do is when I used to make rounds on Sunday, and I still do it with my grandchildren sometimes, I take them with me on rounds, and they would sit in the lounge, the doctor's lounge, and they would have a special treat, and the nurses and doctors would come by and say hello to them, and that's what coming to work with Mom meant, and or with Savta.
Do you ever have to give up on a job opportunity because they would like compromise with you on like the Shabbat and like?
Well, okay, so this is so interesting. When I was a fourth-year resident and I was going on job interviews, no one wanted me because I was a religious lady having babies. And they were scared that I would not be a good partner. Like, oh my God, she's always going to be busy in her kitchen and in her house, and she's not going to be interested in working hard. And as a matter of fact, I walked into a job interview with someone from another hospital. I was like 7 months pregnant. And they took, the two doctors took one look at my belly and said, "Oh, you know, we just filled the job." I swear, we just filled the job. We didn't want to cancel it because just in case something else comes up. So actually, no one asked me to join them when I first left, except for one very crazy lady, because no one thought I was going to work hard. And this very crazy lady went away when I delivered a baby soon after being with her, and she went on a 3-week vacation 10 days after I delivered. So I left her after a few months and joined this large group that offered me Shabbos off, and then I went on my own. So I never had to make all those decisions, you know.
Thank you so much.